You're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
4 seconds left. In front. Happy moment. The Tampa Bay Lightning have won the first Stanley Cup. And the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. Lightning strikes twice. The Tampa Bay Lightning win their second straight Stanley Cup.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RBLR Lightning. As always, my name is Jake Ricker. Alongside me, it's Joe Zamataro, Matt Gannon. Guys, welcome back to the show once again as we are here for episode number 2 of our report card series. Last week, we recapped Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and Braden Point on their season this year and gave them their grades. So if you missed that episode, be sure to head over to the YouTube side or any platform that you listen to us on, and be sure to check out that episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe right here on YouTube so you don't miss out on future episodes, because we're going to have a lot of fun recapping all of these guys. But first and foremost, guys, how you doing today?
I'm very well exhausted. I just got back from a 4-day sail. I raced back here to get this show on the road, but I'm always happy to be here with you fellas.
4-day sail and not even an invite? Oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'm doing pretty well. Nice long Memorial weekend, and glad to
it's
be
Memorial
here.
Day as today's this recording, so we should say a happy Memorial Day and thank you to all of our veterans out there and also the ones who made the ultimate sacrifice. So thank you to all. Happy Memorial Day on today. So first and foremost, we're going to jump into some news that we have a little bit to talk about. The tournament starting to finish up in the USA. Team USA, unfortunately, did not end with a medal, even after going undefeated in the first couple of rounds there. Isimont did score a big goal for Team USA that tied it, but unfortunately, they ended up falling in overtime to Germany, and then they fell in overtime in their bronze medal game as well. But Balsers was actually one of the teams that made it and won the bronze medal. Matt, don't want to butcher the name of the country. So who was it that Balsers was playing for?
It was Latvia.
Latvia, thank you. Yes, so congratulations to Balsers and Latvia, who won the bronze medal in the tournament. So some Bolts making an impact over there in that tournament, which is really cool to see.
Oh yeah, especially when the whole tournament was in Latvia as well. They really showed out, the home crowd there, despite only winning bronze. It's their first medal they've ever won in an IIHF tournament. So I know everybody in Latvia is extremely happy. The team really did come out to play. I mean, to be able to even get a bronze as a really tiny non-traditional hockey country, if you want to call it that, huge props to them. Even if it did come at the U.S.'s expense.
I say anytime that you're playing like one of the NHL games, video games, there, the worst team when you compare countries is pretty much always Latvia. They're the ones that you like if you need to, have a challenge where you score 5 goals in a period. That's the one that you load up to go against. They're always ranked really low, so that is super impressive. And I think it was Matt, you were saying right before the show that they had how many people show up to a celebratory parade for third place?
It was 100,000.
100,000 people to celebrate a bronze. That's awesome. I'm really happy for them, and glad that Balsers could get some ice time that really mattered there.
And congratulations to all of the Bolts that participated in the tournament. I think Perbix and Isimont both had decent tournaments as well. It's just unfortunate that they had a tough end. I mean, they lost both of their games in overtime, too, when you started to get into the elimination rounds after going undefeated. So, I mean, Team USA looked really, really good, and it just some unfortunate bounces that don't go their way.
Sounds like they had some Bolt luck.
Yeah, you could absolutely say that. Maybe it was the Bolts. I hope it wasn't the Bolts bringing over that luck. I hope that's just a coincidence there. But the Lightning do have some other news going on right now, and Jeff Halpern who's going to be doing the interview with the Washington Capitals for a coaching position. So something to keep your eye on. We don't know if Halpern's going to be leaving us for the Washington Capitals. It is a possibility. I know we talked about it on this show before, and I know there's a big difference of opinions when you ask a lot of Bolts fans, because I know some Bolts fans are kind of hoping that he does get picked up by Washington, and there's a lot that like Joe who are also very much against it. But maybe real quick, guys, just a recap for people who may have missed that episode. Are you okay with seeing him go, or do you not want to see him go?
I think he's a very valuable member of the coaching staff. And from a career standpoint, it's awesome to see another coach from the Lightning get an opportunity to have a head coaching position. Because as we talked about, it usually it's just recycled coaches that move around the league, and this seems to be the exception as almost a farm ground for coaching. But definitely be sad to see him go.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment. Selfishly, I would not want him to go. We've got a winning formula with him. He was part of both the back-to-back Cup wins, but at the same time, you want to see your coach and former Lightning alumni advance and be able to take that next step in his career. So again, I won't be disappointed if he does end up getting that head coach position. I'd be very, very happy for him. Same way with Derek Lalonde. I wasn't a little upset that he's gone, but at the same time, you can't not be happy for the guy.
The lawn hurt me a lot. I was really bummed to lose him. I really loved him on the Lightning, but you're absolutely right. It's always nice to see those guys move up in their NHL careers. I would give the Lightning 3 active head coaches as for John Cooper, the current Lightning coach, then Lalonde for Detroit, and Halpern for Washington. Although I'll tell you what, Washington, as you guys know, is my biggest rival and team that I do not like. So I don't love this move for Halpern. I hope he goes somewhere else. I will not be rooting for him whatsoever if he goes to Washington. But that's just me and my own personal bias there. Let's get into the report card series. So we recapped Kucherov, Stamkos, and Point in the last one. That was a pretty easy one, guys, as those guys are always our top players. They're always playing extremely well. Now we're continuing with the top 6, if you will. So still some very good players, but some new faces this year, not new faces, but relatively new faces on this line, and some old guys as well. And I think there's going to be a lot of different things to look at for all of these players' seasons. So we're going to start off with Brandon Hagel, who's in his second year as a Bolt, his first full year as a member of the Lightning. And guys, Brandon Hagel, you guys know I was on the Brandon Hagel train all year long. I called his 30-goal season before it even started, so I was super stoked when he hit that number. But a fantastic year for him. He hits 30 goals, 34 points, or 34 assists for a total of 64 points. He was a plus 23 as well. I know plus minus is not a huge stat, but that's still pretty impressive for Brandon Hagel. So I think he really, really did have a very impressive season, especially after the way it ended for him in the playoffs last year. A lot of people were kind of thinking, they wanted some more out of him. I think he stepped up in a big way this year for the Lightning in the top 6 role.
You kind of remind me of Pierre McGuire now, Jake. You can't get Killorn out on the ice without him saying that he's from Harvard. We can't possibly talk about Brandon Hagel without you sitting here bragging how you predicted 30.
What? I take that as a little bit of an insult. I'm not gonna lie, but hey, listen, man, it was a big deal. I couldn't believe I actually nailed it. So I've got to give my credit for it.
It was a really good call. I would have bet solid money on it that you would have been wrong, and that isn't because I want to see Brandon Hagel underperform. It's just I didn't think he had the season in him that he put out there. He played great, and yeah, plus minus can be a deceiving stat, but when you're plus 23 on a team like the Lightning, and with the way the rest of the stats look, I mean, he was really good at shutting down the opposition, and also really good at generating offense as well. He was a big difference maker out there, and he completely flew under my radar in terms of how much of an impact he would have on the team, for sure.
It's crazy in retrospect. I know this is going to be a little off topic, but with Bedlam in Toronto right now, they're doing a GM hunt and everything. Unfortunately, I'm very invested in the Toronto GM hunt, but last year, Toronto was this close to getting Brandon Hagel and Marc-Andre Fleury, Kyle Dubas had the trade pretty much finalized until Brendan Shanahan, their president, declined the trade. So Brandon Hagel was that close to becoming a Toronto Maple Leaf and ended up
Thank
going to the
goodness.
Lightning. Oh man, I mean, yeah, I mean, thank God that did not happen. And when we did acquire him, it almost was looking like a little bit of an overpay, but again, in retrospect, I think that was a very fair deal. If not the Lightning, really walking away the team that got the better. So he really did have a bounce back season. I think everybody was a bit underwhelmed when he did come to the Lightning. It took a little bit for him to find his rhythm, find his game. He was being shuffled on pretty much every single line. It took him just a little bit to find him a home. Come playoff time, he really did cement himself as a decent, but second, third liner, somewhere in between. Again, we always know Cooper loves to break out the blender, but he found himself as a very crucial two-way forward. Again, kind of a unique position being that two-way forward as a winger, and then this season stepping up to be essentially a first-line player. He did spend a good portion of this year playing on the first line with Point and Kucherov. Of course, down the stretch, Cooper broke out that blender again. He found himself on the second line, but pretty much never lower than that. And no matter where he was or who he was playing with, he was a very consistent player. And man, I mean, what did we say pretty much every single game? Like, he always seemed to be the hardest working guy out there. I mean, he has an extremely high motor, that buzzsaw honey badger type of player, where he just doesn't care who he's up against and what the score is, what the outcome might be. He never quit. He never gave up. I mean, he had a really, really incredible season. He played the same way like he did with us when he first came over in the 21-22 season, but added that extra offensive ability. The goals were the goal scoring was almost prolific. I mean, 30 goals is nothing to snuff your nose at, but it really, not that it came out of nowhere, but it was an incredible bounce back for him.
Yeah, and I mean, also the 34 assists that he had, he was involved in plays, generating offense, and like you were saying, Matt, hunting down guys is, the takeaway stat is a really terrible stat because it's just not a well-kept stat. But the amount of guys that he harassed to generate takeovers was massive. I mean, he did a really good job of back-checking very harder. I would say for the top six, Cirelli would be up there in that argument, but he's probably the hardest back-checker on the entire team. And that's saying a lot considering how fast Braden Point is as well. And, Hagel just would back check hard, generate a turnover. Next thing you know, he'd headman the puck up to someone like Cooch, and Cooch would dish it over to Point, and it'd be a goal that 3 seconds before was an entry into the offensive or to our defensive zone. So yeah, his impact was dramatically felt.
He's a hard back checker, but I'd argue that he's an even harder forechecker. I mean, it seemed like he was always the first guy into the zone if there was ever a dump in or if there was ever, a potential breakout for the opposing team. He was always the first guy in there harassing whoever it might be, most likely, turning the puck over with him each time he went in there. So he really did step it up. And I think in other areas of the game as well, too. Going back to the season prior, I found that he was going offside a lot. I don't think I ever really brought it up on the show, and maybe I might have just been targeting him, but it seemed like he just found himself offsides and killing play, killing momentum way more often than he should have. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that. Again,
Yeah.
I don't think I ever brought it up, but that was something I saw less and less and less of as this current season had gone on. So I guess, I'll call that an improvement.
Some of that's just finding a rhythm with your teammates. I mean, being able to predict what they're going to do. And once you start to play with the same guys over and over, you can just give a look at them and if they're going to go left or right. And by that, are they going to dump it in? Are they going to carry it in? Are they going to have to make an extra move at the blue line that they're, capable of making? And yeah, it definitely took him a few games in order to start to establish that sort of chemistry with the team. But once he did, man, it's there's some magical plays that you can go back through the highlights and find.
And I thought it also continued into the playoffs for him. He had a goal and 4 assists for a total of 5 points, which just may not sound like a lot, but they only played in one round this year. So I thought he was impressive all the way through the season. And the best part is Hagel is still on a $1.5 million contract for this upcoming season. He's then going to be not even an unrestricted free agent, but a restricted free agent. So the Lightning are sitting in a very good spot when it comes to Brandon Hagel, because if he continues the way he does, fantastic. And even if he somehow outprices himself, which I fully believe JBB will do everything he can to bring back Brandon Hagel. I think he's one of those guys that they want to keep for even longer than they have him right now in the long term. So, he'll try to bring him back, but worst case, he's a restricted free agent. He's going to bring in a pretty penny, and the Lightning could get some compensation for him if they have to lose him. I don't think it'll come to that, but that's for next year's problems, and we got to worry about our guys right now. But Brandon Hagel in a great contract situation. He had a great season. He had a great playoffs. Let's go to the grades, guys. I'm going A+, and I really do think he deserves that. He was fantastic this year, really grew into that top 6 role. He continued into the playoffs. His defense, I thought, was really good. I really don't think there's much to knock him on.
Do we have a limit to the number of A+ that can be awarded for the?
No,
for this
I already
team,
hit it. If there's a limit, I've already hit it. There's no question about it. Don't worry. I'm not going to give everybody an A+.
I think dollar for dollar, he is by far the most valuable asset that the Lightning have. I think it's hard to argue that. We gave up Kachuk, Radish, and 2 conditional first-round picks, which they're going to be first-rounders, in order to acquire them. And that, it's worth the first-round picks for what we have. I know that you guys place a lot of value on picks, but I mean that's, I think, a brilliant trade, and he had an amazing season. So hats off to JBB for getting a guy that I'm going to give an A+ for this last season.
Trust me, I love Brandon Hagel. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but I'm going to just stick with a solid A. I'm not going to go above and beyond with the A+. I do, despite him having good numbers in the playoffs, I did think his play was a little sloppy. I don't think his defensive game was where it was during the regular season. There were a couple of times in the playoffs where I thought he just didn't make good plays. I saw a couple of rough turnovers from him. Again, nothing like super egregious, but it wasn't the level of play that I had seen throughout 80-something games that he had played in the regular season. Again, it kind of minor nitpicks here and there, but it was something that I did notice. I didn't think he had a great playoffs despite having a goal and despite leading the team in assists, throughout those 6 games. But it's just one thing that it won't let me give him that A+. But like you did say, Joe, that dollar for dollar, he definitely is the most valuable player. I mean, 1 point, whatever, let's say $1.5 million for 30 goals and 60-something points. I mean, that is a beautiful, beautiful contract. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with the A.
So he was his plus minus was dead even for the playoffs too, though.
Was it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to maybe sway you a little bit to get on board the A+ train here.
Get on the Hagel train. You you want to be on it.
I'm not gonna get bullied. I'm sticking with the. Come on, A is fine. I'd beg for that on my report card.
Fair.
Well, hey, the law of averages say he still gets an A+ overall from all 3 of us.
Fair.
He had a fantastic season. There's no question about it. Hopefully, he can continue to do it again next year. Who knows? Maybe I'll predict that he scores 35 goals next season, and he can hit that one for me too. Joe and Matt are going to be actually kind of annoyed if he does. They're going to oh my God, we're going to listen to Jake again for 30 episodes talking about all the goals he scored.
The only thing that would annoy me about that is we'd have to pay him extra. That's the only thing.
Well, he was great, and he's going to be looking to do it again next season, especially with this being a contract year for him. So there's Brandon Hagel. He gets an A+. Although Matt, had to give him an A to take it down a little bit. We're going to our next guy, though, and that's going to be Anthony Cirelli. I think Anthony Cirelli is a fan favorite here in Tampa. There's a lot of people that really love his play. He's one of the best two-way forwards we were just talking about on the Tampa Bay Lightning. The only guy that can actually give him a little bit of a run for his money is probably Brandon Hagel. So Anthony Cirelli, he had a late start to the season because he was dealing with injuries. But when he first came back and he was hot. He finished with 11 goals, 18 assists for 29 points in 58 games played. So when you look at the numbers as a whole, you might not think, oh, it's not that great, but he was hot when he came back, even after dealing with injuries and, still being that great two-way forward that he's always been for the Lightning. So very solid year for him as well. I don't think, you look at the playoffs, he had in 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points. It was the later games where he really stepped up big for the Lightning and had some big moments there. I mean, 3 goals, 3 assists is very impressive in itself. So a lot of things to like here from Anthony Cirelli.
Yeah, despite the late start to the season, I mean, we were all begging for him to come back, as soon as possible, but he really did start off very, very hot. And, of course, he did kind of tail off. He's not expected to be a point per game guy. We all know that he's one of the best defensive forwards in the league. I'd go so far as to call him a shutdown forward. His faceoff game really stepped up this year. I know faceoffs were a huge killer for the Lightning, especially early in the year, and it seemed to really switch around once Tony Cirelli got back into the lineup. I remember the one game against Boston that we won this year. I mean, he was smoking Bergeron in the faceoff circle. I think it was something like 13-3 against Bergeron. I mean, that's enough for a trophy right there. So I do predict in the next couple of years, if he could have a fully healthy season and, not praying that Bergeron retires, but if he could have a fully healthy season, Cirelli, that is, I see a Selke in his future. But
Did you
again,
just say not praying for Bergeron.
I respect Bergeron. He's the one of the few
He's the
Bruins.
one respectable Bruin
Yes,
players.
he's one of the few on that team that I have to respect, whether I like it or not. But again, everybody has to like those good, responsible defensive centers, and that's exactly what he is. I mean, it seems like he hardly ever makes any mistakes, if any. Joe, you got something?
No, I mean I agree. I love Cirelli as a two-way forward. So it was a shoulder surgery that he had. He played a total of 58 games. It wasn't his most productive point per game season, but it was pretty much on par with what you would expect out of him at that pace. I mean, the good thing with a shoulder is you can still keep your legs really active, which that's one of the hardest things. Is skating. If you can't skate, you can't keep up with the speed. But Cirelli looked so good because he could keep his legs active while he wasn't playing games and came in looking healthy. The thing is, I mean, he really is such a good defensive player. I wonder a little bit if. And I think we'll probably get into this more next week, but if he wouldn't have been better served on the third line, and I really like the way Nick Paul was playing before, Cirelli got back into the mix. And again, this is more of a compliment on Nick Paul than it is trying to talk down Cirelli. But I kind of felt like once he came back, the Lightning lost a little bit in terms of offensive prowess. But I mean, that said, he's still such a great shutdown guy because there are a lot of players in this league that you put Cirelli on and they can be completely neutralized. He's he's really good at getting that pressure that's needed in order to take some of the most lethal chess pieces off the table and get them completely. Well, I mean, not even necessarily completely taken care of, but you don't have to worry about putting someone like, I don't know, Kucherov up against them, right? So he's very responsible defensively, is what I mean by that.
Well, clearly Matt did not agree to your take at all. He was so disgusted that he'd walk out and walk back.
It was his dog complaining that they didn't like what I had to say.
Yeah, Bella heard you. She wasn't agreeing with it.
I mean, listen, he had a great season. There's no question about it. And to do that after coming back from an injury is impressive in itself because sometimes it takes a little while for guys to get back and back up to that game shape. Anthony Cirelli jumped right into the thick of it and was great for them in the postseason. So when you go to the grades, I'm going to go with, and I kind of feel wrong for saying this, but I'm going to go with an A-, just because I think he could have had a little more offensive production, even though he's not really known for that. He still had such a good season overall, great defensively, really good in the postseason. But I'm going to knock him a little bit for maybe hoping for a little more offensive production, especially after what we saw from him. I mean, I know you're going to come back down to earth, but he was so good at the beginning when he first came back, and then did kind of tail off a little bit, but still a fantastic season for Anthony Cirelli.
Jake, I'll agree with you there. There's not really much I can take away from him. He was a little streaky at points this year, so I'll agree with you, giving him an A-. But the streakiness doesn't come with its ups and downs. He had a little bit of a slump, but I'd say he finished off the year really strong, and the playoffs even stronger. So again, I can't take away very much. We know he's not, going to be that point per game, 30-goal guy, but he really did show up where he was needed, and his defensive game did not really miss a beat.
So you gave him an A-, Jake? Is that what you said?
Correct. Yes.
All right. So I'm gonna if average is a C, I'm gonna give him a B-. And a lot of that is because I playing regular minutes on the second line. I wanted to see him step up more. I know he's coming back from injury, but you got pretty much average stats out of a guy that has been, he's seen quite a bit of top 6 minutes in his career, but he's really been more of a third line guy, and he had some consistent time playing second line last season, but I'd like to have seen him elevate his game. I was expecting more out of him, and I don't think that the injury is enough to justify giving him bonus points because he wasn't able to achieve that. So, I mean, that's why, you're going to get a B- out of me. He didn't play particularly poorly in the playoffs. Looking at his numbers, he was a +1 overall. He had a 2-point game in that blowout where Toronto completely blew out the Lightning. And I love Cirelli. I really do like that guy. I could see him being like a future, captain of the Lightning even. Especially if you were able to keep him long term. But he only gets a B-. And before we transition to another guy, I have a question for both of you.
Yep.
Go for it.
All right, so between Hagel and Cirelli, who would you rather have forecheck a puck that's dumped in? Because you're saying what a good forechecker, Matt, that Hagel is. And I think that when it comes to board battling, Cirelli's significantly better. It's, if puck gets dumped down, who do you want to be the first? Who do you want to be the F1?
That is a very good question. It would really have to depend on the scenario. I would say probably, I don't know. I think Hagel's a little bit more physical on the initial rush up, but Cirelli is definitely pound for pound one of the best board battlers, like you were saying. I think he's probably better at picking up those loose pucks. So I'd say if it was probably like a dump in on the power play or something, I'd probably rather have Hagel, especially because he plays a little bit more power play. But in most scenarios, I'd probably rather have Tony Cirelli. I think he adds not chaos, actually a little bit of controlled chaos. I think he's a little bit more precise and with his forecheck, and I think that just comes with his defensive masterclass.
I'm going to go with Brandon Hagel as well.
Of course.
It's just because – all right, hang on now. I got more reasoning here. You guys want to jump to conclusions here.
All right, Pierre.
Cirelli – oh, jeez. I'm not going to be able to shake that, am I now? Cirelli, to me, is more of a defensive great back checker. And I think he's really good on that defensive side. So if I'm – if I have to pick – they're both great. But if I have to pick one, I think Hagel's a little better at getting in faster than Cirelli is. So I'm going to go with Hagel offensively. If you're asking me who do I want going to beat the other team to the puck defensively wise, it's Cirelli all day for me. So just from the offensive perspective, I'm going to give Hagel a slight edge, but I really do think both of those guys are really good at that. Either way.
Despite me, just flaming you there, Jake, I think I do agree. Actually, I think I'd probably let's say that forecheck goes awry. I'd probably rather have Cirelli chasing a guy down on the back check. But again, this is all such conjecture right here. It's such a tough argument. But
yeah, I like that though. I agree. I think Hagel would be better if it's on the power play because if he comes in and he grabs the puck, he's going to generate a play with it. Most likely with Cirelli, it's going to end up being a board battle where if it does get turned over the wrong way, he'll make that effort to get back. But on the power play, you need to come up with quick possession or allow them to do a quick clear.
It's such a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. Now, I think when it comes to averages, let's see, me and Matt give him an A minus. Joe, you go with a B minus. So I think he gets a B overall.
I'll say B
from all three of us, which still is a great grade. And Joe, I was tempted to go in the B range, but then the homer in me is like, don't you dare give him a B. You need to give him an A. But still, either way, great season from Anthony Cirelli. It was really impressive for him, especially with the injury. I know I've said it a couple of times, but that was there's a big factor for him, and he kind of overcame it, I think. And he may need to have even a bigger role coming into next year, depending on how the team shapes up here. And Joe, it'll be interesting when we get to some of the later episodes talking about where he's going to fit in the lineup next season. We're not quite sure. It kind of depends on how some of the things shape out, but we will something definitely keep our eye on for sure. Now, the next guy, before we jump into him, guys, Killorn to me he's been with the Lightning forever. He's kind of like a throwback guy to me. He's not that old, but he reminds me of, and I'm wearing the 2004 Stanley Cup hat today, the throwback. I've got my Tampa Bay shirt on as well, but it's just, I get that throwback feeling, which, by the way, if you want some awesome throwback inspired merch, be sure to head over to shop.rblrsports.com. We've got some awesome inspired throwback merch, just like the one you can see on screen if you're on YouTube right now. Bring Back the Devil. I love that one. It's one you should definitely go check out. The Tampa Bay, which I am repping right now. I know it's kind of hard to see because of our the way the cameras are framed up, but awesome inspired merch over there for every single Tampa Bay sports team. Again, you can use code BOLTS for 10% off your order at shop.rblrsports.com. Links, as always, are in the description. So Alex Killorn, a veteran throwback kind of guy, he's the guy that everybody always talks about as trade bait when the trade deadline comes around, but he's been on record multiple times saying that he never wants to leave Tampa Bay. He absolutely loves it here. He's Mr. Influencer, Mr. Harper. He's got all different kinds of nicknames. He went 82 games this year, 27 goals, 37 assists for 64 points. Even though Killorn can be very streaky sometimes, which I think is probably going to be the biggest knock on him, he is a really, really solid player for the Lightning.
I don't think he was very streaky this year. Despite having a career year, I thought he of course, it was his best season ever. I really thought
more overall he can be streaky. Like if you look at his entire career, he's had.
That's a fair assessment. But for whatever reason, I saw a lot of people picking on him this year. It was him and Cirelli, at least in the forward group. A lot of people were picking on, and I understand the gripe with Cirelli. He was more streaky than Killorn this year, but I really don't get the hate for Killorn. I think he is a huge crucial piece in the locker room. He's got a lot of the intangibles. Everybody loves him. He's a super good glue guy that can also hurt you on the ice. He's not just the fourth line grinder that they keep on the team because he's a good guy. Like, he is just an all around good guy on and off the ice. So having a great year this year, he really stepped up. Especially in a contract year, unfortunately, but I'm never going to complain about a player having a good year. There really isn't a lot to be said about him. There are aspects of his game I wish he would maybe bring out a little bit more, but when you are playing like that, playing like he did this season, it's hard to wish him to be a little bit more physical. If we did this last year, I would have a lot more to say about it because, having no goals in the playoffs, and it took him what seemed like not forever, but it took him a little while to get his first goal even, in the regular season this year. So if we were doing this last year, I'd have a little bit of a different tone, but this year I really can't say anything bad about him. He had a decent playoffs. There wasn't anything great. It wasn't anything terrible at all. So no, honestly, I'm going to keep this brief. No, Killorn had a really good year. I really can't see myself giving him, anything less than an A. I mean, when I'm grading relatively, I can't say anything bad about him. It was a really tremendous year from him.
He had a great year.
Yeah, I mean, I have always really thought of Killorn as a big playoff performer. I've criticized him pretty decently about his his playoffs last year. I thought that he didn't do nearly as much, especially like in the finals. That was one of the reasons why the Lightning weren't able to overcome the Avs this year. I thought that, given the 6 games that were played, he still played pretty well. For his entire playoff career, looking at the numbers, he's at almost half a point per game for his entire career, which is not too shabby when you consider the role that he plays. He is a guy that is shut down. He is a guy that goes in there and throws bodies, and he's not really. And he's got a really a net front presence, right? That's where he scores the goal. Actually, I was looking at one of these advanced stats, and for the team, for how's it worded? The high risk scoring opportunities,
High danger.
high danger. Right, he's number 1, and there's a reason, because he's on the doorstep. He's on for a lot of those plays. I mean, think about the I always talk about the Kucherov fake slap shot pass, but he's been standing there for quite a few of those, and he is in a great scoring spot when he has the team to surround him. I'd say this season overall, he's just been really, really consistent. He had career number of goals, career number of assists. And it does suck, man. It sucks that it's in a contract year, because I know we've lost him, and that just sucks.
No,
That
we
sucks.
haven't.
I'm going to disagree with you though completely, because
100%.
he did have a career year for sure, but we talked about this in, I think it was 2 episodes ago now. Again, if you want to check that one out, be sure you go ahead in the archives here on YouTube and check that out. But every guy who's had a similar season to him, when I looked at the comparables, they went down, and Killorn wants to stay here. I think he's absolutely willing to take a pay cut and join this team again to make another run at it.
I think the pay cut, though, would have to be about half of what he's going to end up being offered, or even less. And I mean, he's smart. I don't know if you know this, but he went to Harvard.
I was gonna try to make that joke.
Go try working it in. Yeah. I mean, he can't give up that money. This money's got to last him the rest of his life. It'd be foolish to allow your loyalties to the organization, location, jeopidize that for him and his family, right? I mean, it just would be silly.
Money, but I mean, he said he was willing to retire and then not stay here in Tampa, and that's why I don't think he's going anywhere.
I think when he gets offered $5 million elsewhere, he'd be a fool to not take it. Yeah, straight up.
True.
Since Matt already gave his assessment, though, I think for Killorn, this was an A+ season. I think he played great. I'm just a little sad thinking he played so well that he's going to be gone.
I hope not. I know he's always the punching bag when it comes to the trade deadline, but I really like Killorn. I mean, he's got some amazing playoff moments in his career. We could do a whole episode on Killorn if we wanted to. He's a great guy. For my grade, he had a career year, so it's really hard to go anything less than an A. I'm just going to go with an A overall. Just because he had such a career year. He was still outshined by some other guys, because that's how deep and good the Lightning are. But I'm going to go with an A overall for Killorn. Great year for him, career year. I hope he stays. We'll have to wait and see, though. Maybe JBB can work some of his magic in there. Bottom line, though, is Killorn's a really smart guy. And I'm going to do something crazy, guys. If none of us can be as smart as Killorn, but if you want to be pretty darn close to Killorn, don't forget, head over to shop.rblr.com and use code BOLT for 10% off your order. That's where the smart moves are at, heading over there and checking out some of that awesome inspiring merch. There you go, two for today in today's episode. Guys, before we wrap it up, I do want to mention this. If you're keeping your eye on the Stanley Cup playoffs, I'm not, because I'm still very in the depressed stage of after the Lightning losing, but the Florida Panthers going to the Stanley Cup finals. I mean, how about it? They have had an unbelievable run. And the reason I bring it up is because I think it's hilarious that Florida got so much crap for not being able to host hockey. They said it wasn't going to work out down in Florida. And you look at what the Lightning have done, and even now the Panthers, the last, 3 now? conference finals have gone through Florida. I mean, the Lightning with the last couple, and now the Panthers taking over there for this year. Just a really impressive run, though, by the Panthers. I have to give them credit, even though I really don't want to.
One of the funniest stats I've ever seen was since 1993, the amount of Canadian teams to make the Stanley Cup final was 7, and the amount of Florida teams to make the Stanley Cup final since '93 was 6. I mean, that's crazy right there. As much as I want to hate on the Panthers, again, they'll always be little brother. It is really cool to see.
Well, we got to let little brother shine every once in a while, right? And that's what we step back for them to take the spotlight this year. It's been fun, and they look really good, and we're waiting to see who they're going to play in these Stanley Cup Finals. And I have to wish them luck just for the state of Florida, but a small part of me also hopes that it's Dallas or Vegas.
And just remember, despite what the statistics said, Carolina did not get swept in those 4 games. They did not get swept.
Okay, Rod.
What a comment! What? I understand what he's trying to say, but way to sound clip yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you had that's almost as bad as the Lightning's post that they made back in 2019. It's like that in those moments, you just say nothing. I mean, there is nothing you can say and that was probably the worst thing he possibly could have said. I don't know. It baffles. I will give the Hurricanes some credit because the graphics team for both sides had some fantastic graphics before each of those games. So that was a fun little battle in between itself, the two social media teams.
I'd say Carolina's really good at that. Wasn't it Carolina that the Lightning were playing during one of the bubble years that it was their graphics guy for their home game? I think it was the clinching game for the Lightning. They put up all the stats for the Vasilevsky shutouts, so they just kept putting the word shutout on the scoreboard. He's like, Vasilevsky has had so many shutouts in his career. In playoffs, he's had 7 shutouts. Just trying to, you can't say the word if they're having it. It's like, by the way, did we mention the word shutout?
And he ended up shutting them out that game.
Oh, I do that.
They were trying everything they could.
Well, hopefully it's going to be a fun Stanley Cup final. I hope we're getting to Game 7 after Vegas and Dallas play tonight as of this recording. But that's going to do it for us in today's episode. Thank you, guys.
Before you wrap, if they do go Game 7, who do you have?
Dallas.
If Dallas is able to force a Game 7, I mean, they've got all the momentum. They got nothing to lose. I think if Vegas is going to win it, they have to do it tonight.
All right. We'll see you next episode then.
Okay.
We absolutely will. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe right here on YouTube and follow us on social media at RBLR Lightning so you don't miss out on all the great content that we have over there for you guys as well. Next week, we will be, again, continuing the report card series. We'll start looking at the bottom 6, so make sure to tune in for that. We'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.